Hello there, internet people. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but before September is over, there's actually going to be a lot of elections held all over the world. Like, we have the uh, governor recall election in California, but then there's also national elections in Canada, uh, Japan, I forgot the name for a second, Germany, Norway, possibly some others. So, politics is probably on a lot of people's minds, like even more so than it usually is nowadays. And I semi frequently do get questions about what my ideals are, and I have mentioned before I'm an anarchist, but I figured that can sometimes be a little broad and a little bit misunderstood. So I figured I'll just take a political compass test here. Why not? Like, where you can all see, and not the traditional like political compass where it's just 4 points, because I don't think those tests are very good. I think it's a good starting place maybe for understanding ideologies, but there's a lot where it just straight up it doesn't fit on there. Like, for example, where would you put Nazbols on there? Like, if someone is far left on certain economic issues and they're far right on most social issues, then I don't think those exactly cancel out. You can't really say that they're a centrist party, like, so it just doesn't make sense. And so I went with the nine axes test because there's some which go even beyond nine axes. Like, there's some that have like 20 or 30, but by that point I think it's getting a little too navel gazing and a little too hard to understand. But this one is pretty straightforward. Like, are you more progressive or traditionalist? Are you more secular or religious? That sort of thing. So I figured, hey, let's just get on this, and if you feel like watching, then let's do it. Okay, yeah, series of statements, and it's just like agree, disagree, that sort of thing. And I'm gonna do full version. Why not? Why not? Equality of outcome is important. Somewhat agree. Police need more power and protection. Strongly disagree. Like, especially if you're in the United States. Like, they already can do basically anything they want, and they have military equipment, and they just straight up do not obey what the government tells them to do a lot of the time. So, yes, strongly disagree. People should have the right to leave their wealth to their descendants. I have mixed thoughts on this one, because just sometimes there's so much, and it's giving them a leg up in the world, like, so people straight up don't have the same opportunities. But other times, like, yeah, you want your kids to have a better life. So I don't know about this one. Like, I'll say agree, and we'll just leave it there. People should have the power to choose their leaders. Strongly agree. Even when protesting an authoritarian government, violence is not acceptable. Strongly disagree. Like, especially with authoritarian governments, force is oftentimes the only thing they respond to. Only our national languages should be spoken in our country. Strongly disagree. I really don't care what language you speak. Religion should be removed from everything in our government. Strongly agree. Again, don't care what religion you are, but don't force it on other people. Sex outside marriage is immoral. Strongly disagree. I don't give a shit. If we accept migrants at all, it is important that they assimilate into our culture. Alright, this is a bit loaded, a bit of a loaded question. I will say disagree, however, that really only applies when you're not hurting other people. And that goes for everything, whether it's like part of your culture or whatever, to, let's say, make sure women aren't educated. Like, there are some cultures where that's the case. I don't really give a shit if that's your culture. Like, you're not going to do that, especially not if it's coming here. But at the same time, there's a lot of times where parts of their culture are just harmless. So for the most part, I don't care. I will just say disagree. A military option should always be considered. Again, strongly disagree, because in some cases it just does not make sense. Peace preferable to war whenever possible. Strongly agree. Don't know how many people openly disagree with that one, but, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. Yes. Subdivisions of nations should have their own militaries. Sure, agree. Why not? Whistleblowers should be strongly protected. Strongly agree. People should have equal opportunities to succeed. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. People should have equal opportunities at the very least. The elders in society know the best path for it. Honestly, strongly disagree. Like, for one, stupid people get old too. Like, just because you're old doesn't instantly mean that you know better. And secondly, I mean, I know it's a cliche, but older people do tend to be more socially conservative than younger people because just when they were kids, for instance, like homosexuality wasn't as accepted, so they're just not as used to it as we are nowadays. And so think with things like that, I just don't take them all that seriously if I'm being honest. So I'm gonna strongly disagree. Oh man, this is hard to find a good spot. Yeah. If you have nothing to hide, then you shouldn't care about the government having access to your communications. Strongly disagree. Government abuses whatever power you'll give it, so try not to give it too much. The general populace makes poor decisions. I will say disagree. I won't say strongly disagree. Like, yes, the populace can be swayed by propaganda, and sometimes, yes, the masses don't always make the smartest decisions. However, I will say that that also goes for individuals. Like, if you have an absolute monarch or something, they aren't always going to make great decisions either. But a lot of the time, people do have a general understanding of what will help them and what will hurt them. So I'll disagree, but I won't strongly disagree. Only extremely talented immigrants, if that, should be permitted to enter the country. Strongly disagree. Borders are a social construct. United Nations needs more power. Agree. Like, I think that the United Nations shouldn't have, like, nuclear arms or anything, but the fact that it can have resolutions saying, like, hey, maybe don't commit genocide, but it can't do anything to actually stop it is not great. So it should at least have the ability to, like, say, economically sanction places. Local governments can understand their citizens better than the national government ever could. I'll do agree. Those who do not work should die. Strongly disagree. Not everyone can work. Public utilities like roads and electricity should be publicly owned. Yeah, strongly agree. Why not? The government should not regulate the economy at all. Strongly disagree. Like, unregulated economies is how you get the 19th century, and that was no fun. Direct democracy is the best form of government. On a small level, strongly agree. On a bigger level, I just agree slightly, because once you get to like millions of people, it is very difficult to like put together referendums and such. But generally speaking, if we're talking like a single town or a single community or something, like, yeah, direct democracy is better. Automation overall is extremely good for society. This one really depends on how you do it, because if it's just like everything becomes automated and suddenly majority of the population are out of a job, that's very bad. But if we can do it better and do something, a lot of people have been throwing out universal basic income, which is a start, I suppose. But if we did that, then that'd be better. So I'm just going to say neutral for now. In general, immigrants are bad for the country. Strongly disagree. There should be no police force. Strongly agree. Marijuana should be legalized. Strongly agree. I don't smoke marijuana, but I also don't give a shit if you do. Laws should vary to area and culture to culture within a country. I'd somewhat agree. Again, it depends on what specific laws, but, in some places, like, say, New York, if they want to have stronger, stricter gun laws than in, like, rural Wyoming, then sure, let them. I would disagree with those laws, but, in urban environments, they tend to be used by, like, gangs and stuff, whereas in rural environments, they're for, like, hunting and personal protection, so people just have different views of them, and people should be allowed to influence their local laws, at least to an extent. Any deals other countries want must be bad for us. Strongly disagree. Life is not a zero-sum game. Illegal immigrants should be deported in most or all cases. Strongly disagree. Traditions are of no value on their own. Strongly agree. Some traditions are good, some are bad. Doesn't really mean anything on its own. Local governments give each region good representation of their views. Not always. If you look at the United States, like state governments and stuff, those are often extremely corrupt and extremely gerrymandered and things like that. So I would say disagree. However, it's not strong disagree because, again, on a local level, you tend to have a better understanding of it than on a national level. People should be given freedom whenever it causes little security risk. Strongly agree. Communism, if implemented correctly, would be a good form of economics. Like, yeah, sure. I mean, obviously you can disagree with the theory, but the theory is pretty sweet. My religious values should be spread as much as possible. I mean, in my case, it would be lack of religious values, so agree. A country must be sure to take all measures to enforce its laws. Uh, let's say agree. I'm not going to say strongly agree because laws can be unjust, but I'll say agree. A nation's culture is important to protect. Strongly disagree. Just like tradition, it's of no value on its own. The national government can't understand what the people need. Strongly disagree. War is needed to make an economy thrive. Strongly disagree. Public opinion swings too much with emotional events to be useful for policy making. I'll say neutral on this one because, like I said, yes, public opinion does swing wildly with emotional events. Like the aftermath of 9/11 has been talked about a lot, and for younger people, you just don't quite understand how much like bloodlust there was among the average American for years after that, and that led to shit like the Afghanistan invasion and the Iraq War, and it's just like it's not good. But at the same time, you shouldn't just ignore public opinion. So neutral. Religion should be banned. It shouldn't be banned. No, I will say strongly disagree. It just shouldn't affect other people who don't want to follow those beliefs. I am proud to be in my country. Disagree. I don't really give a shit. Alliances can pose a threat to a nation's sovereignty. Strongly disagree. Immigrants should be expected to learn the language of the country. I will agree with that because, if you're going to move here and then not even make an effort to learn how to speak to the locals, I think that's pretty rude and arrogant of you. But, if you don't learn it, it's not like I think you should be thrown out or anything. Those who disagree with the government should be removed from the country. Strongly disagree. We are first and foremost citizens of Earth. Strongly agree. Like, we're all in this together. Shit that happens here affects other places. The freer the market, the freer the people. Again, free market is kind of a buzzword sometimes. It can be hard to understand what people mean by that. But I'll just say neutral. National cultures are important to protect. We've had similar questions to this. Strongly disagree. We should respect those who have served in our military. Just for serving? Disagree. Like, I've had a lot of family and friends who have served in the military. It doesn't mean much on its own. Like, it's not a positive thing. It's not a negative thing. It just means you were there for a while. So there are some people in there who are absolute psychos, and there's some who are just complete saints, like the most amazing people you'll ever meet, but a lot of them are just, people. It's just a job. Maintaining family values is essential. I will say strongly disagree, because again, family values can be a buzzword. It usually means divorce is bad, premarital sex is bad, homosexuality is bad. That's usually what people mean when they say it, but, it can mean other things. So it's a buzzword, but generally speaking, I will just strongly disagree. There's no need for local or state governments. Strongly disagree. The government should not break up monopolies. Strongly disagree. Monopolies are bad for the consumer and for the market as a whole. Each person should have one vote equal to every other. Strongly agree. The government should monitor all citizens to combat terrorism. Disagree. Like, I'm not going to strongly disagree because there are some situations where, like, people will say or do things and that could set off, like, a red flag or something. Like, people have shot up schools and stuff, and before they did it, they have mentioned, hey, I feel like shooting up a school, and just nothing was done about it. So in situations like that, yeah, I will say they should go in and do something, but you shouldn't be monitoring us 100% of the time. Technological progress is usually good. Strongly agree. Like, mostly because of the word usually. If it just said technological progress is good, I do regular agree, but because usually, strongly agree. It is important that the government follows the majority opinion even if it is wrong. I'll say agree, because, we've had similar questions. Yes, people can get emotional, but you should go with what the people want. State and local laws should have precedence over national laws. Disagree. Nations fighting amongst each other gets in the way of progress. Strongly agree. Diplomacy only hurts nations. Strongly disagree. Like, Jesus Christ, what kind of a psycho would you have to be to send other people to die because you didn't want to talk it out? There must be a separation between church and state. Strongly agree. Popular opinion is not always right. Somewhat agree. Technologically is not always beneficial. Somewhat agree. We should be taking in more refugees. Strongly agree. Like, we start those wars, we have the resources and the space for it. Like, yeah, do it. People should hold more loyalty to their local state than to their country. Disagree. Government-owned industry is usually a bad idea. I mean, there's situations where it goes wrong, but there's a lot of situations where it works out pretty well, so I'll just disagree here. Local governments should have more power than they currently do. I mean, in the United States, like, state governments and local governments do have a lot of power to do certain things, but then there's other things where they have no authority whatsoever. I'm gonna disagree. Like, they're doing a lot of nasty shit with, like, abortion and voting rights lately, so I'll just disagree. Subdivisions should not be able to exempt from national laws. I will agree on that. Like, national laws or federal laws, however you want to put that, are not always better than local ones. A lot of times they're worse, but still, they are national laws. Economies without any capitalism will collapse. Disagree? Like, I mean, if we're talking central planning, then that tends to work out well for a little while, but after you've industrialized, it tends to fall to pieces. But, I mean, there are socialist systems that have markets in them, so I don't know. The word capitalism is also pretty loaded, kind of a buzzword. George Orwell wrote about that a lot. Government surveillance is necessary in the modern world. Disagree. States cannot function without a strong national government. Somewhat disagree with that, because, like, they can in certain situations, they can't in others. Excuse me. Basic things needed to live, such as healthcare, are rights. Strongly agree. It is important... Excuse me again. It is important to maintain our national sovereignty. Disagree. War is never justified. Agree. Some freedom must be given up in order to keep people safe. Depends on which freedoms like you're talking about, but I mean, I see your point. I'll just go neutral on this one. Why not? I don't like the idea of it, but sometimes shit happens. Traditions are important. I've said this before. Strongly disagree. International trade is generally beneficial. Strongly agree. Like, just open borders in general are beneficial. Immigrants are a net positive. Strongly agree. Technology is negatively affecting modern society. Disagree. There's a lot of ways in which it helps. Alliances are important for protecting a nation. Strongly agree. Like, NATO has kept a lot of countries from being invaded over the years. Immigrants can never really adapt to our way of life. Disagree. I've seen this myself. Like, it happens frequently. Human-caused climate change... Or actually, I should strongly disagree. Human-caused climate change is currently one of the greatest threats to our way of life. Strongly agree. Our culture would be better with other cultures mixed in more. Strongly agree. American culture has serious issues with things like greed and hyper-individualism, which I think could be pulled back on a bit. A country cannot function without a national government. I mean, if we're talking a country, like a nation-state, then no, it really can't. So, most bad things happening in the world are caused by us turning away from religion. Strongly disagree. Religious terrorism, anyone? Not 9/11, the anniversary of that just came up. Nobody but me can adequately represent my views. Strongly agree. That's kind of why I'm doing this test publicly. A united world government would be beneficial to mankind. I mean, maybe. It really depends on, like, the character of that government. Only those who serve in the military should be allowed to have influence on who is in power. Fuck no. Strongly disagree. Having independent nations with the risk of global conflict creates a large threat to humanity as a whole. Yeah, sure, agree. My nation should stay out of international affairs. Sure, agree. Military spending is a waste of money. Disagree. Yes, it is wasteful sometimes, especially when a lot of it goes into straight into the pockets of Blackwater or Northrop Grumman. But at the same time, like when you have bases set up in communities, then that's like a constant influx of cash for those communities, and people who are in the military, like that's a guaranteed paycheck. So they are helping to stimulate the economy and stuff. It's not like they're taking all the money and then just burning it. Like there are some benefits to it, so I will say disagree. Testing products on animals is ethical. Depends on the product, but yeah, overall I'd have to agree. It's not pleasant, but sometimes it just has to go that way. Only those who served in the military should be able to gain power in government. Strongly disagree. Didn't I just say this? National government needs more power. Disagree. Police should be regulated more. Strongly agree. We must go back to a basic way of life without modern conveniences. Strongly disagree. What kind of anarcho-primitivist shit is this? Tradition just hinders the progress of technology. Somewhat agree. Democracy is more than a decision-making process. Yes, strongly agree. Democracy is the idea of respecting other people's right to make their own decisions and to live their own life. Taxes should be increased on the rich to provide for the poor. Strongly agree. Particularly capital gains tax. People should think of themselves as citizens of their nation rather than their state. Agree. Society was better many years ago than it is now. Strongly disagree. In most every metric, life has gotten better. I support gay marriage. Strongly agree. I'm not gay, but I really don't give a shit what other people do. Border protection is important. Strongly disagree. When people have already suffered for technology to be developed, we should use that technology. It's a weird question, but I suppose I agree. A nation usually needs a military in order to survive. Usually, yeah, so I will agree. A hierarchical state is best? Fuck no. Most drugs should be legalized. Yes, I don't encourage doing drugs, especially like hard stuff like heroin and meth and stuff, but if you want to do that, then you should be able to. Like the drug war has not been a success. Religion usually provides the truth. Strongly disagree. No authority should be left unquestioned. Strongly agree. It doesn't matter if it's like your boss or your school or your government. Like, you should never just be a drone. You should always think critically about things. The very existence of the state is a threat to our liberty. Strongly agree. I support single-payer universal health care. Strongly agree. The stronger the leadership, the better. Strongly disagree. My nation is closer to my views than most nations in the world. Disagree, yeah. The United States, our Constitution, for instance, it was great, considering the time period it was first written in, but it has not exactly adapted perfectly to the modern world. So, like, our election systems and such are just not great. They're pretty primitive, so, and that's just one example, so I will say disagree. There is no higher power. Strongly agree. Children should be educated in religious values. I mean, again, do you mean religious values or lack thereof? Like, either way, I think they should be taught to, like, think critically and stuff, but, I mean, like, I just don't like the idea of indoctrinating them, which is often what it comes across as, so I will say disagree. Religion does not belong in government. Strongly agree. A government must maintain a strong military to defend itself. Somewhat agree. Countries that do not serve our interests should be toppled. Fuck no. What kind of banana republic CIA shit is that? The government has no business looking into most people's personal lives. I will say strongly agree. Governments should be as concerned about foreign citizens as they are about those within their borders. I will say agree, because sending out foreign aid and stuff, even if you just want to take like a cynical political view of it, keeping other countries stable helps to prevent your country from being flooded with like refugees or illegal immigrants or something, which, if you're not careful, having a lot of those can also cause trouble. I mean, again, I'm not against letting in refugees or immigrants by any means, but even if you're just going to be cynical about it, that is the smart move, and also just it's the right thing to do if you have the resources. There are many issues that does not make sense to address at a local level. Strongly agree. A national government must be strong to adequately protect all its citizens. Disagree. The government should support and only recognize one religion. Strongly disagree. Theocracy is a good system of government. Fuck no. Nations should not maintain a military. Part of the problem with this is that my view of nation states altogether is not very high. Like, if you're going to have nations, fuck it, just disagree. We should be more accepting to other cultures. Strongly agree. Everybody should speak at least 2 languages. Strongly agree. Faith is complete nonsense. I will agree somewhat. Like, I'm not going to come out here and say that the conclusion I reached on religion is 100% the unassailable truth, because I don't like when people just have complete faith in themselves like that sort of arrogance and that level of commitment, I suppose, that leads to a lot of trouble. Like, I mean, hell, that's exactly what people like the Taliban and Al-Qaeda do. Like, they have 100% faith in themselves and their beliefs, and they do nasty shit with it. So just because my beliefs I feel are logical does not mean everyone else feels that way, but at the same time, yeah, it does come across as stupid. So, long-winded way of saying agree. Absolute freedom makes a society dangerous. Well, freedom to or freedom for? Freedom from? Fuck. Whatever, just disagree. Society cannot function without leaders and followers. Strongly disagree. People's freedoms should have no limits. Agree. Why not? Diplomatic options should always be tried before war is even considered. Strongly agree. It is more important to retain peaceful relations than to further our strength. Strongly agree. Genetic modification should be used rarely, if ever. Disagree. Like, I don't like the idea of, like, it being super expensive and so a genetic elite is created, but I mean, as long as everyone has the same option to get it, then that could be great. International aid is a waste of money. Strongly disagree. Kind of went over that earlier. The benefits of open borders would outweigh the costs. Strongly agree. Religious clothing should be banned from public. Disagree. I really don't care if you're gonna wear a turban or a hijab or something. It just doesn't affect me. It's a good idea to test a policy in one state rather than implementing it nationwide right away. Yeah, sure, why not? Strongly agree. People must be allowed to follow a religion. Strongly agree. Strong states weaken a nation. I mean, I guess they kind of do, but is that bad? Sure, why not? Agree. The United Nations should have a military to enforce its resolutions. Disagree. Illegal immigrants do not provide a benefit to the hosting country. Strongly disagree. Foreigners should never enter the country. What kind of North Korea shit is this? Laws should not be based on religion. Strongly agree. There should not be international law. Strongly disagree. We should put effort into getting a person on Mars in the near future. Yeah, strongly agree. Like, even if it doesn't have all that much practical benefit, it's just really cool. Laws should be completely consistent within all regions of a nation. I mean, I talked about this before. Disagree. Depends on which laws specifically. Like, civil rights shit, for instance, should... Like, you shouldn't have the right to change that depending on what state you're in. But for the most part, I just disagree. Catering to popular opinion is detrimental to a nation. Disagree. The United Nations should be abolished. Strongly disagree. Because even in its current form, it does at the very least provide a forum for diplomacy, which is extremely valuable. People should not have protections that could hinder discovering their criminal activity. Strongly disagree. Criminal activity is a very wide brush. Like, not all law-breaking is bad. I believe in a higher power. Strongly disagree. Religious organizations often provide better assistance to the poor than the government does. I will disagree. It won't be a strong disagree, because, yes, sometimes they do. A nation must obey its leadership without question. Strongly disagree. Abortion should be legal in all cases. Strongly agree. If you own nothing else in this world, you own the meat on your bones. Lasting peace leads to prosperity. Yes, strongly agree. There's, not even an argument against this. Just history proves this. People born to wealthy families have unfair success even when they aren't skilled and don't work hard. Yes, again, this is not really debatable. No cultures are superior to others. I will agree, but not strong agree, just because basically, if a culture doesn't value personal freedom and it tries to control people who don't really live up to that culture's standards, then that's very bad. If AI could rule more effectively than humans, then AI should rule. Strongly disagree. Elections are an effective way of showing government's approval. Kind of depends on how the elections are set up, but assuming they are properly democratic and representative, then strongly agree. It is necessary for the government to intervene in the economy to protect consumers. Strongly agree. History doesn't lie. State laws should have precedence over national laws. Man, I feel like we've been asked this same question a couple of times, but just fuck it, disagree. Nobody in other countries has our best interests in mind. Strongly disagree. A constant state of war benefits a country. Strongly disagree. The internet should be banned. No. There is no need for a national government. I agree. Religion must decline for society to progress. I will somewhat agree. Because sometimes people, even without religion, they do wind up buying into other dogmas which can be just as harmful. The government should not fund any religious organizations in any way. Agree. In the modern era, militaries aren't really necessary. Disagree. Nations should cooperate whenever it benefits them both. Yeah, of course. Like, strongly agree. Victimless crimes, such as drug use, should not be crimes at all. Yes. Oppression by corporations is more of a concern than oppression by governments. Agree. It does depend on the circumstances, but generally agree. Every religion must be looked upon equally by the government. Strongly agree. Or, well, like, yeah, again, you do have some, like, weirdo cults and stuff. So, I will just say agree. I won't say strongly agree. Like the Branch Davidians or the Unification Church and stuff, like, they're actively, like, attacking people and the governments and stuff, and so it's just, nah. It is important that we maintain the traditions of our past. Strongly disagree. To chase progress at all costs is dangerous. I will disagree, but I won't strongly disagree. Because, yeah, sometimes the costs can outweigh the benefits. Capitalism is better than any existing alternative. We have no right to militarily intervene in other nations. Agree, but not strongly agree. Like, if you were actually intervening to, like, stop a genocide or something, then that would be good. The national government protects minorities better than some local governments do. Like, yeah, some local governments. I will, sure, strongly agree. Environmental regulations are essential. Strongly agree. Leaders must be strong or a nation will suffer. People should have to work for anything they get. Disagree. Like, if you have the ability to work and you don't, then that's pretty shitty. But if you don't have the ability, then come on in. A group of states without a strong national government is merely an alliance, not a nation. Somewhat agree. Elections are a waste of resources. Strongly disagree. There should be compulsory military service. Strongly disagree. I enjoy some foreign cultures. Yeah, definitely. We should not allow any refugees. Strongly disagree. I went over that. Countries that violate human rights should be toppled. Oh, man, I like, on paper, that sounds like a great idea, but I mean, we saw what happened in Iraq. So I'll disagree. It is very important to maintain law and order. It isn't. Like, it really depends on what those laws are and what that order consists of. Like, if it's an unjust law, then you shouldn't work to maintain it. Local governments address issues that the national government would never touch without them. Strongly agree. Religion is beneficial for society. Strongly disagree. The sacrifice of some civil liberties is necessary to protect us from acts of terrorism. Disagree. War usually leads to worse outcomes. Yes. The government must be by the people for the people. Yes. In order for humanity to survive, we must get past having separate nations. Yeah. Traditional medicines are often more effective than modern medicines. Like, that's not even an opinion. That's just like, that's objectively false. Like, the life expectancy in China 100 years ago was like 30. Nowadays, it's, I think, 74. Like, it wasn't tiger penis that turned it around for the Chinese. I believe there is something after death. Strongly disagree. Countries fall apart with constant war. Strongly agree. A better world will come from automation, science, and technology. Most likely, so I will just say agree. The poor choose to be poor. Eat shit. Disagree. It is better to maintain a balanced budget than to ensure welfare for all citizens. I mean, you kind of have to have a balanced budget in the long term, but short term to, like, stimulate the economy and stuff, like, not having a balanced budget is perfectly fine. But, I mean, if you're just gonna, like, take out loans and stuff to provide for citizen welfare, which is kind of what Greece did a while ago, and that didn't work well for them. So honestly, just, like, in this case, yeah, I will say agree. Government should be accountable to the international community. I strongly agree. All societies are a blend of cultures. Like, yes, no shit. Democracy makes it too easy for a majority to further itself at the expense of minorities. I will say disagree, because, yes, there are cases where this happens, but that's why you should have stronger regional protections. Military action by our nation is often necessary to protect it. I mean, by the United States? Fuck no. I support regional unions, such as the European Union. Yes. The more people ask, the better chance there is of reaching the best decision. I mean, depends on the circumstances, so I'll just say agree. Representatives rarely represent the nation well. Strongly agree. They're wealthy people who got into politics to become even more wealthy. It is important that we further my group's goals above all others. Fuck you. All humans share a common identity. Strongly agree. Genetic modification is a force for good even on humans. Sure. Strongly agree. Why not? The government should have access to the emails of suspected terrorists. Depends on how much evidence you have that they are terrorists. I'm going to say disagree. Excessive government intervention is a threat to the economy. Disagree. Democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others we've tried. Strongly agree. Anybody who wants to enter the country should be able to. Strongly agree. The wealthy have far more than they need. Strongly agree. People should vote issue by issue themselves. Agree. Okay. That was a long one. Okay, so we are finally at the results. The axes for either a federal state or a unitary state, that is, like, basically decentralized and centralized, it actually says neutral. I'm kind of surprised. I would have expected to lean more towards the federal side of things, but, you know, it's been a while since I took one of these tests, and, well, your beliefs do change over time. And I think going over this out loud has forced me to rethink some things as well, so I think I answered a bit differently than I would have otherwise. And then we have democracy versus authoritarianism, extreme democratic. Like, yes, that's good. Democracy is a good thing. If you believe otherwise, eat shit. And then globalist versus isolationist, extreme globalist. Like, nation states are created by humans, and just like everything created by humans, it doesn't have to be there. Like, it's not inherently good or bad. I mean, the nation states are bad, but just because something is created by humans doesn't mean it's a good thing. Like, you know, we're all sharing this rock. Our actions affect people in other places, even if we don't realize it at the time. Yes, globalism. Alright, and then militarist versus pacifist. Extreme pacifist, yes, like, people should generally be armed and be able to protect themselves if things go wrong, but you shouldn't jump into violence. Especially not just for the sake of violence. And then freedom versus security, extreme freedom. Like, yes. Just, yes, I don't think you're going to find many people who are, like, anti-freedom just because the word freedom is kind of nebulous a lot of times. I think I mentioned that before. But, yeah, you will have people saying, well, we should restrict them in some ways, and just, no. Most of the time, you don't need to do that. And then equality versus markets, extreme equality, obviously, because there's no such thing as equality of opportunity, at least not how things are set up now, and we should, at the very least, at the very fucking least have that. But because we can't, extreme equality. And then secularism versus religious. Kind of surprised it's only at 78%. Like, I don't hate religion. I'm not like an anti-theist. I just am generally not a fan of it. And it should be your personal business. It shouldn't be affecting government policy. And it shouldn't be hurting other people, especially people who don't follow those beliefs. And then progress versus tradition, extreme progressive. Like, tradition is meaningless on its own. And then assimilationist versus multiculturalist. I'm fanatic multiculturalist. Like, yeah. Again, I don't really care what culture you're a member of as long as you're not a dick. Just be cool and we'll be cool. And then closest match, libertarian socialism, otherwise known as just general anarchism, which didn't surprise me. But yeah, so just use this video as like a flashpoint if you ever have questions on like what my political beliefs are, I suppose, because that was a long test, went over a lot of things, and I don't know, I had some fun with it. If you want to see more things like this, then you're going to have to wait a while, because I don't feel like doing this again anytime soon, but I'll see you later. Bye.